The notification arrived at exactly 11:47 p.m., illuminating a phone screen that typically only displayed business communications and anonymous threats. Yet this particular message stood apart from all others. It originated from an unrecognized contact, a woman reaching out in desperation. "Please help me. He's going to kill me tonight. I don't know who else to reach out to." This was the first contact I could find. Dominic Castellano, notorious crime lord of Chicago's underworld, studied the glowing text. His initial reaction was skepticism, perhaps a misdirected message, an elaborate scam, someone contacting the wrong person. But then a second message materialized on his screen, the words trembling with raw terror. Quote 1. Dominic's breathing halted momentarily. Throughout his ruthless career, he had witnessed fear in countless eyes. He had manufactured that very fear when necessary. But this particular cry for help felt fundamentally different. Here was a desperate woman pleading with a complete stranger because everyone else in her life had abandoned her. His fingers moved across the screen, typing only 3 decisive words: "I'm coming." His assembled lieutenants froze in stunned silence as their boss abruptly stood during the middle of a multi-million-dollar territorial negotiation, seized his coat from the chair, and strode purposefully toward the exit. "Boss, we're still in the middle of... This meeting has concluded." His tone permitted no argument or explanation. Something about that woman's trembling desperation had struck a chord deep within him, touching a part of his humanity he believed had perished 15 years earlier. As his vehicle carved through Chicago's darkened streets at dangerous speeds, another message illuminated his phone screen. "He's armed with a gun. He's threatening that if he can't possess me, nobody will." Dominic applied additional pressure to the accelerator pedal, his knuckles whitening against the steering wheel. He typed rapidly while navigating. "What's your name?" The response came quickly. "Olivia Harper." "Olivia, you can call me Dom. I'm approximately 10 minutes away. Can you create a barricade against the door?" "I've pushed the cabinet against it, but the barrier won't last much longer." Then arrived the message that caused his hardened heart to fracture. "If I don't survive this, please convey to my mother that I love her. She resides at Sunrise Care Home, Linda Harper. She suffers from Alzheimer's disease, though occasionally she still recognizes my face." Dominic experienced something breaking apart inside his ribcage. This terrified woman, trapped and facing imminent death, was dedicating her final moments to thoughts of her ailing mother. She was making peace with her own mortality, composing a farewell message through a stranger. "You're going to deliver that message yourself." "Stay connected with me, Olivia." 2 agonizing minutes passed without response. No incoming texts, no reassuring words. He attempted calling the number directly. Nobody answered. His pulse hammered against his temples like a war drum. Then one final message materialized. "He's broken through the bathroom door. I'm concealing myself in the closet now. I can hear him loading ammunition into the gun. Thank you for responding, even if you don't arrive in time. Thank you for not ignoring my plea." Dominic recognized that resignation immediately. It was the unmistakable sound of someone surrendering to their fate. 15 years ago, an identical call had come from his younger sister, Sophia. She had been trapped with an abusive boyfriend, crying for help. Dominic had driven with desperate speed, but he'd arrived 20 minutes too late. When he finally reached her, Sophia was already gone. He spoke aloud to the empty vehicle interior. Tonight, he wasn't responding as a feared mafia boss. He was responding as this woman's sole remaining hope in the entire world. Dominic didn't waste time knocking politely. One powerful kick from his expensive Italian leather footwear, and the deteriorating wooden door exploded from its rusted hinges, crashing violently against the interior wall. The metallic scent of fresh blood assaulted his nostrils before his vision could fully adjust to the darkness within. Apartment 4B appeared as though a violent tornado had swept through every room. Furniture lay completely overturned. Fragments of shattered glass littered the floor like fallen crystalline stars. A streak of crimson blood traced along the wall, leading ominously toward the bedroom. He advanced through the destruction like a predatory shadow, each footfall carefully measured and silent. Dominic had navigated scenarios like this countless times throughout his violent career. The difference tonight was profound. In previous situations, he had always been the hunter. Tonight, he was racing to rescue the prey from another predator's claws. A blood-curdling scream echoed from the bedroom interior. A man's voice, saturated with alcohol and unhinged fury, and beneath it another voice, weaker, choked with tears, desperately pleading. Dominic thrust the bedroom door wide open, and for a suspended moment, his entire world ceased moving. Marcus Webb stood dominating the center of the room, one fist cruelly gripping a handful of the woman's long brown hair, violently dragging her from the wardrobe as though she were nothing more than discarded fabric. His other hand brandished a pistol, the cold metal barrel pressed directly against her temple. And for the first time, Dominic's eyes fell upon Olivia Harper. She appeared smaller and more fragile than he'd imagined during their brief text exchange. Her brown hair was tangled and matted with drying blood along one side. Her face displayed extensive bruising. A massive swelling distorted her left cheekbone. Her lower lip had been split in a deep gash that still wept fresh blood. The white blouse she wore had been violently torn at the shoulder, revealing layers of bruises in various stages of healing. Old ones faded to sickly yellow-green, mingled grotesquely with fresh ones turning deep purple-black. She resembled a delicate flower crushed beneath a merciless storm, battered, broken, seemingly defeated. But her eyes told a different story entirely. Those brilliant green eyes, though brimming with tears and undeniable fear, still burned with an unmistakable flame. It was the primal will to survive, the absolute refusal to surrender. It was the identical light that Dominic had once witnessed in his sister Sophia's eyes before that light was permanently extinguished. In that crystallized moment, Dominic no longer perceived the bedroom before him. Instead, he saw Tyler Morrison's apartment from 15 years past. He saw his beloved sister Sophia lying motionless on the floor, blood flowing from the fatal gunshot wound in her chest, her eyes already robbed of their vital light. He saw everything he had catastrophically lost because he'd arrived too late. But tonight was different. Tonight, he stood here in time, and this woman continued breathing. Marcus spun around violently, redirecting the gun to aim directly at Dominic's chest. His eyes were bloodshot from excessive alcohol consumption and mounting madness. His hand trembled noticeably, though his finger remained dangerously positioned on the trigger. Marcus snarled, his speech slurred, yet still coherent enough to recognize genuine fear. Because something in Dominic's calm, predatory stance at that doorway communicated absolute danger. Dominic offered no response. His calculated silence proved far more terrifying than any verbal threat Marcus had ever encountered. "I asked you a fucking question," Marcus screamed, spittle flying. "One more step and I'll blow her brains out across this wall." Dominic tilted his head slightly, observing Marcus with clinical detachment. Then he advanced forward. One deliberate step. "You want to shoot her?" Dominic finally spoke, his voice low and steady as a funeral bell. "Then pull that trigger. But afterwards, you'll need to shoot me. And Marcus," he paused meaningfully, "I don't believe you possess enough ammunition for what happens next." Marcus blinked in confusion. The casual mention of his name stopped him cold. He'd never disclosed his identity to this intruder, so how could this stranger possibly know? Dominic continued advancing methodically. Marcus, panicking completely, pulled the trigger. The gunshot detonated through the confined space like thunder. Olivia screamed and instinctively curled into herself, but Dominic didn't even flinch. The bullet grazed past his left shoulder, tearing through expensive suit fabric before embedding into the plaster wall behind him. Marcus had missed because his hand shook too violently, because alcohol had compromised his vision, because somewhere in his subconscious he understood that successfully hitting this man wouldn't save him. It would only ensure his death became more painful. In that moment of Marcus's stunned disbelief at his missed shot, Dominic moved with blinding speed. 2 seconds. That's all the time required. His left hand seized Marcus's wrist and twisted it sharply at an unnatural 90-degree angle. The distinct sound of cracking bone rang out alongside Marcus's agonized scream. The gun clattered uselessly to the floor. Dominic's right hand grabbed Marcus by the collar and hurled him into the brick wall as though he weighed nothing. Marcus's back slammed against the surface with a sickening impact. Before Marcus could slide to the floor, Dominic's hand had already closed around his throat, lifting him completely off the ground, feet kicking uselessly in empty air. "You enjoy hitting women, Marcus?" Dominic asked, his voice remaining terrifyingly calm. Dominic could end him right now. Just slightly more pressure. Just a few more seconds, and Marcus Webb would become a lifeless corpse. He'd executed this action so many times throughout his career that it would be as effortless as breathing. But then he heard a sound, ragged, broken breathing behind him, a small, choked sob. Dominic turned his head and saw Olivia. She sat huddled on the floor, her back pressed firmly against the wardrobe, arms wrapped protectively around her knees like a frightened child hiding from nightmares. Her green eyes stared directly at him, at his hand crushing Marcus's throat, at the violence unfolding before her traumatized gaze. And in those eyes, Dominic recognized fear. Not fear of Marcus anymore. Fear of him. Fear of the monster he was becoming right before her eyes. That single look in her eyes saved Marcus Webb's miserable life. If Dominic killed him now, directly in front of her, he would become just another monster in the long parade of monsters that had passed through this woman's suffering life. He released his crushing grip. Marcus dropped to the floor like a sack of potatoes, choking desperately for air. Dominic crouched beside Marcus's pathetic form. He paused, allowing those words to penetrate Marcus's panicked mind. "And if you ever consider returning for her, I will find you, regardless of where you hide." "Get out!" Marcus crawled toward the door and vanished into the Chicago night like a fleeing cockroach. Dominic stood motionless, hands trembling. Not from fear, from unreleased rage. He desperately wanted to kill Marcus, but he'd chosen mercy. Not for Marcus's sake, for Olivia. He retrieved his phone. Dominic located a clean towel, dampened it with warm water, and returned to Olivia. He knelt carefully before her. She nodded hesitantly. He gently pressed the warm towel against her wounds, carefully wiping away dried blood. These hands that had killed without remorse now touched her battered face, as though she were made of the most delicate crystal. Quote 9. Olivia whispered hoarsely, Quote 30. Dominic paused in his gentle ministrations. Quote de fond. Dr. Rachel Chen arrived and thoroughly examined Olivia. Quote 2. Rachel looked meaningfully at Dominic. Quote 33. Dominic knelt before Olivia again. Quote, Olivia's eyes filled with devastating loneliness. My mother has Alzheimer's. Most days she can't remember my name. And Marcus systematically isolated me from friends. One by one, they all stopped reaching out. I haven't spoken to anyone in over a year. She lowered her head shamefully. I have nobody. That's exactly why I texted a random number tonight. Dominic remained silent, thinking. Then he made his decision. You're coming home with me. The black Mercedes glided smoothly through Chicago's nighttime streets. Olivia rested against the window, painkillers pulling her toward merciful sleep. Dominic drove in silence, but his thoughts traveled 15 years into the past. Back then, he'd been Daniel Rivera, with a hard-working mother and a brilliant sister named Sophia, who represented their family's entire future. Then Sophia met Tyler Morrison. Everything changed. Until that terrible Thursday when Sophia called, terrified, with Tyler threatening her life. Daniel drove desperately, but traffic blocked him for 45 agonizing minutes. When he finally arrived, 2 body bags lay on the sidewalk. His sister was gone. After losing both Sophia and their mother, Daniel Rivera died. From those ashes, Dominic Castellano was born. The Mercedes entered the private garage of Chicago's tallest building. They ascended to the penthouse on the 52nd floor. The space was immaculate, expensive, and completely soulless. You live here alone? Olivia asked quietly. I don't really live, Dominic admitted, staring at the glittering city lights. I just exist. He showed her to a spacious bedroom. There's a lock on the inside. You control it. Nobody enters without your explicit permission, especially me. For the first time in 2 years, Olivia felt genuinely safe. Days passed. On the 4th day, Olivia overheard Dominic's office conversation and realized the truth. He was a mafia boss. When he found her listening, he didn't lie. Yes, I control organized crime in Chicago. I've killed people, Olivia. I've done terrible things. But you saved me, she said quietly. Maybe I'm not trying to save you, he replied. Maybe I'm trying to save myself. That night, Olivia woke screaming from nightmares. Dominic sat in her room until dawn, keeping watch. This is the first time in 2 years someone actually wants to protect me, she whispered. Weeks passed. The cold penthouse thawed with laughter and conversation. They cooked together, played chess, talked for hours. Their fingers touched over popcorn during a movie. Neither pulled away. Something profound was growing between them. But Marcus hadn't left Chicago. Nursing his hatred, he allied with the Volkov family, Russian mafia enemies of Castellano. Marcus offered information about Dominic's weakness, Olivia. When Marcus sent Olivia a threatening text, Dominic found him within 24 hours. Standing over Marcus with a gun, Dominic thought of Olivia's eyes, of his promise to her mother. Instead of killing Marcus, he called the FBI. Marcus was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but Viktor Volkov ordered retaliation. An ambush left Dominic bleeding. When he returned home injured, Olivia saw the reality of his violent world. Quote 47. Quote 48, Dominic said emptily. Quote 49. Olivia waited for him to ask her to stay. He said nothing. She left that night. 7 agonizing days passed. Both lived in emptiness. Then Victor's men kidnapped Olivia. She managed to dial Dominic before the phone was ripped away. "Not again!" Dominic roared. "Not again!" Within minutes, 7 black SUVs tore through Chicago. Dominic charged into the warehouse, absorbing bullet wounds without stopping. He found Olivia bound to a chair, Victor Volkov behind her with a gun to her head. Vincent shot Victor in the shoulder. Dominic cut Olivia free and pulled her into his arms. "You came," she whispered. "I will always come," he promised. Always. 6 months later, Dominic left the criminal underworld, transitioning everything to legitimate business. Olivia founded a nonprofit for domestic violence victims. One spring afternoon, they visited Sophia's grave together. Dominic knelt and placed white roses. They walked away hand in hand beneath golden sunlight. One mistakenly sent message, one midnight cry for help, one broken mafia boss, one battered woman. That's all it took to change 2 lives forever, because sometimes a wrong number leads to exactly the right person.